My name is Vicki Kane. We're going to start the debate. I'd like to thank the City Clerk Linda Tyer and Mayor Dan Bianchi for joining us tonight for this debate. These are questions that are based on issues in the neighborhood. The first is neighborhood development, and the second is public safety. So I hope you all enjoy the debate, and always remember, vote.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight's mayoral debate, and thank you to the West Side Neighborhood Initiative for hosting it. I am Jim Levulis, the Berkshire Bureau Chief for WAMC Northeast Public Radio. I'll be serving as tonight's moderator. Debating tonight are Pittsfield Mayor Dan Bianchi and Pittsfield City Clerk Linda Tyer. The debate will start with opening statements from both candidates lasting 2 minutes each. We will then get into the question and answer session. I will ask each candidate a question, largely focusing on neighborhood redevelopment and public safety. The questions were formed by working with members of the West Side Neighborhood Initiative. Which candidate answers first will alternate. After each candidate initially responds, the first candidate will have a 1-minute rebuttal or can ask the other candidate an on-topic question to which he or she has 1 minute to respond. The second candidate is then given the same option. We will end with closing statements from both candidates lasting 2 minutes each. Please hold all applause until the end of the debate. We start with Mayor Bianchi's opening statement.
Thank you very much. Limited technology here. Thank you very much for being here. I want to thank the West Side Initiative for sponsoring this discussion this evening. I had the great pleasure of serving 10 years as the representative of the West Side, and I was a charter member of the West Side Initiative. And those were some of the best days of my life, being involved with the West Side, representing the West Side, and wrestling with issues and concerns. And I don't think in 10 years I missed more than 3 meetings. It was wonderful. So thank you for sponsoring this. Now, I had some prepared statements for an opening. Doesn't seem quite as relevant as it did this morning. You know, most days it's absolutely wonderful to be a mayor. Today started out that way. I pulled into my parking spot and I saw 3 high school kids, and they were putting "Be a Voter" stickers on my parking sign, the mayor's parking sign in the parking lot. And I started kidding with them, and I asked them what they were doing, and they said they came up to register to vote. I was really excited about that. And I love talking to youngsters, so I invited them to come into my office and talk to me, and talk about what they want to do in their lives. And I said to them, if you study hard, and if you work hard, if you're committed, there's nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't be. And I happen to have a map of the city with the new street map on there. And I said, this is an engineering map. You could be an engineer. You could be a city manager. You could do a lot of things. And I truly believe that. Later in the day, I was with a group of wonderful senior citizens when my phone rang. And I answered that phone, and it was from one of our largest employers, Sabic. And I was informed by a senior vice president that they would be moving their North American headquarters from Pittsfield to Houston, Texas. That makes a very challenging time to be a mayor, but it only encourages my resolve to work that much harder for the people of Pittsfield.
Good evening, everyone. It's a privilege to be here in the heart of our city, the West Side. Now, last night we were all together in front of the Parks Commission advocating for the renaming of Pitt Park in honor of Rosemary and Reverend Willard Durant. That was led by the people of the West Side. It was a grassroots movement. It is an example of how, when people come together with good intentions, you can make a big difference in your community. It was a privilege to be there, to be a part of that process. And I'm happy to hear that Mayor Bianchi's parking sign was painted with "Be a Voter" stickers today. The Be a Voter initiative was a program that was started by me and my staff in the city clerk's office to encourage the civic obligations of all citizens to become engaged in elections. Now, what I know from my time here running for the city, running for office, is that all across our city, we have families who get up every day and go to work and raise their children. And sadly today, we have learned that some of those families will be facing job loss. They will be facing relocation. This is a difficult time for the people of our city. They will join the others in our community who compete to find a job. Some of the people in our city are searching for a place to call home, and they're exhausted by struggle. Aging relatives want to stay in their homes and manage their income so they can enjoy retirement and enjoy their grandchildren. And also in our city, we have many businesses who strive every day. They arrive, they have a plan, they turn on the lights, and they seek the next great opportunity for their business. And we have visitors who come to our city every day to shop and dine and be entertained. We have great potential in our city, and I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation.
Thank you for those opening statements. On to question one. We'll get right to it. The answer starts with Ms. Tyer. Ms. Tyer, how will you reach out to the West Side? The first question is, how will the candidate reach out to the West Side as mayor?
So I think that the most important position in the office of mayor is to be an activist for your community. The opportunities here in the West Side are the opportunities to achieve great potential in this neighborhood are so important for the stability of our city. This is one of the most diverse neighborhoods in our community, and I think it's important for us to bring everyone together in a new dynamic where we are hearing from the neighbors in this community about what their hopes and dreams are. What are your aspirations? What do you believe about yourself and about your city? And how does government help you to achieve your dreams? That is the job of the mayor of the city of Pittsfield, to engage in every aspect of this community. So if it means becoming engaged with the West Side Neighborhood Initiative, or becoming a part of the Christian Center and the good work that they do for this community, it's also important to understand how government can make this part of our city, which in some instances I believe has become a forgotten part of our city. How do we invest a fair share of our city resources in this neighborhood? So there's a lot to talk about and a lot to do, and I think there are great people here in this community, in this neighborhood, who have taken a stand. We have the Man Up group who have taken a stand. We have women who are nurturing the young women of this community. We need to join with them in all of those efforts to help them succeed.
Thank you. 2 minutes? Okay, thank you very much. Well, as I said before, I've been a part of the West Side Initiative for many, many years, and I was actively involved. And the West Side Initiative was formulated to listen, to be a sounding board. And we have all of the organizations that are invested in the West Side. We have the churches that preside in the West Side are members of the West Side Initiative. And I was an active member for many years, and we planned the changes in the West Side. I have been listening to the West Side. We had talked at one point about the old Nagelschmidt Market over on Linden Street, and the mayor wanted to turn it into an art center at the time, but the people of the neighborhood had a different idea. There was a great need for parking. The Christ Memorial AME Zion Church was located right next door, and that was always an issue, parking there. And even though the mayor at the time wanted to see a repurposing, the neighborhood wanted to have additional parking that would accommodate the church and many of the homes in the area. And I pushed for that, and we changed that. When I first became a city councilor, the little children that come to this school were crossing a notice street by themselves. I pushed for crossing guards. I pushed for crossing guards there and at Crosby. So I've been involved because that's what I heard from the neighbors. They needed protection, and they got it. We also have been engaged in numerous neighborhood cleanups. I've been in the middle of the West Branch of the Housatonic River, pulling out tires and bicycles, because that's what the neighborhood wanted. And we had one of the first wide neighborhood cleanups where old couches and televisions, and I was right there with everyone. So we have to listen to the people of the West Side, continue to encourage people to be involved in the initiative, and be a vibrant part of their community.
Ms. Tyer, you're now allowed 1 minute for a rebuttal, or you may ask Mr. Mayor one question.
Thank you very much, Jim. I think the most important question that I would pose to Mayor Bianchi, in your time as a member of the West Side, both as a city councilor and now as mayor, part of the important thing, of course, planning and attending meetings, but the important thing is to actually initiate and do and deliver for the people when they ask for things. And one of the things that the neighborhood really wants to know about is what we're going to do with St. John's Hall. Do we have a plan for that?
Very good question. As a matter of fact, we have a plan for that. We have a plan for about 11 other properties that we have been studying and evaluating. We just can't take down a piece of property. We currently have a hazardous material assessment happening with St. John Hall, and that should be underway very shortly. The bids just went out, and 10 other properties in addition to that. The cost to take down St. John Hall and those other 10 properties is roughly $573,000. We have $127,000. That will take down about 5 or 6 properties. So the plan for St. John Hall is to either take it down or repurpose it, and quite frankly, I think it's too far for that. So it's my job to find the resources to take down St. John Hall, but that's not until we have a thorough and honest discussion with the 10 people whose names appear on the deed for St. John Hall.
Time, Mr. Mayor. You now have 1 minute to either ask a question or you can continue for one more.
Okay. I would like to, in this, maybe getting into another area, public safety, or do we not? Okay, so we're going to stay with that. All right. I guess I would say to you, Linda, what are your plans for incentives for the redevelopment of the West Side area?
Well, I think if we stay on topic, one of the original question was, what will you do to become engaged with the West Side? And I think one of the important projects that the West Side has been waiting for is the Riverway project. This is an important community asset for this neighborhood. There's opportunity here for improved outdoor activity where they have access to creating a new park with access to canoe launches and the potential for creating connections to the rest of the parks here on the West Side. So the incentives for redevelopment may come up later in our debate, but I wanted to stay focused on what I will do to become engaged in the West Side. And completing the Riverway project will be an important part of my administration.
Question number 2. There is a desire to rebuild an appropriate neighborhood business community in the West Side. What will you, as mayor, do to help that effort? Mr. Mayor, starts with you.
I have looked at what we could do to stimulate activity here. Unfortunately, in the West Side, there's not as much commercial property as there is in other areas of the city. So it makes it a little bit more challenging. But I have talked about, and it's my intention to create incentive zones. And we would start off with, so that we don't destroy the character, because it is still a neighborhood, so that we don't destroy the character of our neighborhoods, we would create incentive zones starting at North Street, on both sides of Linden Street, and running to the end of Linden. And that's the proposal, and we would do the same thing over on Columbus Avenue. If we can create tax incentives for commercial establishments to be built in those areas, I think it would preserve the neighborhoods, but it would also stimulate economic activity. I'd then like to encourage that we have incentives for homeowners to redevelop their properties. So I think it's a combination of efforts, but I think that it is really important that we begin with an incentive program, a tax incentive program for those people who would like to have a commercial property along those two zones, which are historically the commercial areas of the west side.
I think that the first thing that must happen here on the west side in order to inspire business incentives and business development is to begin to improve the quality of life for all of the people who are living here now. There is a significant number of properties in the west side that need the attention. We have absentee landlords who have created a sense of disincentive in this neighborhood. So we need to begin addressing those issues before we can inspire new incentive and new business. So I think the first thing we need to do is to begin to improve the quality of life for the people that are living here. And I also think that there are opportunities within the neighborhood itself to create opportunities. The men and women who are living here may have ideas of their own that they could propose to us that government can partner with.
Mr. Mayor, you now have 1 minute for a rebuttal, or you may ask Ms. Tyer on an on-topic question.
Well, once again, I think that communities need help, whether it's a West Side community, whether it's Morningside, or any other part of the city. And we have to work with people, and I would encourage people, and we have had membership drives to join the West Side Initiative. One of the things that sort of hurts any effort is when we have so many people moving in different directions. I would encourage people to become a member of the West Side Initiative, to work with the West Side Initiative, and to become stakeholders in the neighborhood. And then, through those meetings, to let us know just what kind of commercial development you think would enhance the wonderful neighborhood that has such a great history here. What kind of incentives do you think would be needed to enhance the properties and the homes?
Thank you. I think that one of the important new state agencies that are available to our community, the Gateway programs and the transformational development opportunities, provides a resource to us that we have not yet tapped into. We have, over on Tyler Street, made an investment in revitalizing that neighborhood. And Mayor Bianchi has been a representative of the West Side for a long time. I would think that as the West Side's representative, that this would have been the first place that he would have sought out transformational development initiatives and gateway city opportunities.
Question number 3. How will your office engage the neighborhood to make the potential Riverside Park a neighborhood and city destination? Ms. Tyer, it starts with you.
Well, thank you, Jim, for that question. And I do believe strongly that this is an important asset for this neighborhood. It was important to be able to vote for the land takings that created the opportunities for this new park. So there's opportunities now for us to within city government to invest in the Riverway project and make it a priority of our community development office. It has languished. A lot of good planning was put into place. A lot of efforts to take properties to create this park have taken place. However, in the last 4 years, it has languished to the detriment of this community. So as soon as I take office, this will become a top priority for this administration because this community asked for it, wanted it, and has done, wanted it, and has planned for it. So it's time to get busy making it a reality.
Mr. Mayor?
And there are tremendous needs throughout the city, not just on the west side. And I would suggest that improvements in the parks, and we have a number of parks. You're suggesting that we're going to create yet another park. But the fact of the matter is, here on the west side, we have Dorothy Amos Park, which is a tremendously active park that serves the Riverview West apartments and many of the homes in the area. We have Clapp Park that is active, but we also have Coolidge Park and Tucker Park. And when you're a mayor, unfortunately, you don't have the opportunity to throw money at every single project. You have to take care of what you have. You have to preserve it, maintain it, and encourage its use. And with the activity levels at those parks, I would say that while the Riverview and the Riverway Park is important, we have to take care of what we have. We have to cherish the parks that we have, and we have to encourage more activity in the parks that we have before we take on another one and burden the taxpayers with yet another park that isn't being utilized.
Ms. Tyer, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I would challenge that. You know, we have many neighborhoods in our city that have benefited from park investments. Neighborhoods in other parts of our city have seen significant improvements in their parks, but the west side has been forgotten. There has not been enough investment in all the parks in the west side. You know, it was disheartening to know that the basketball court at Pitt Park, despite numerous efforts and pleas for repair, went unanswered until just this year. It is important to this community, and it showed last night during the Parks Commission meeting how much the people of this neighborhood treasure their outdoor spaces. So you can be sure that I will care about your parks, and it will be a priority. I understand that there are financial challenges in every municipal budget, but when you set a priority and you make the investment, then you can deliver for your community.
1 minute, Mr. Mayor.
1 minute is a rebuttal? Okay. Well, our parks are our priority. However, we cannot continue to make investments in properties that we can't maintain. And I think that it is important that we understand that. And we understand that while we want to do everything that we possibly can, we've got to do what we can do with those parks that are already in existence. We have to encourage more programming in those parks. But to say that we haven't invested in any of the parks is just totally wrong-headed. To suggest that we haven't invested in the west side is totally inaccurate. We have a Safe Routes to School program that safeguards the young children that go to this school. That's where my priority is, with education and safeguarding the children, not adding another liability that we may not be able to maintain. You have to have a plan that makes sense, that is affordable, that doesn't burden the taxpayers.
Question number 4. What is your plan for deconcentrating poverty in Pittsfield? Mr. Mayor, it starts with you.
That is a difficult issue, and we have concentrations, unfortunately, of poverty all over. 60% of the children that attend the public schools here in the city of Pittsfield are on either free or reduced lunch. And of course, you decentralize poverty by creating opportunities, by investing in education. That's why I've put so much emphasis on educating our youngsters, on having those kind of programs that are going to take the kids who are living in poverty, and people live in poverty because they are unable to have a job. The best public safety initiative is a good job. And I work with the children in this school, Crosby, Morningside, so that they will have the literacy initiatives that will allow them to be reading at 3rd grade level so that they will be successful once they enter high school, and so that we can direct them in a new program at a new 21st century high school so that they will be able to go into a job when they leave. But it is imperative that we focus on education. It is imperative that we focus on those programs that increases the literacy rate, and it is imperative that we focus on 21st century programs that will engage children, that will make them interested in engineering, science, technology, the arts, as we have at our middle schools here in town, so that when that new high school is built, They will be prepared to enter a vocational program that will prepare them for either further education at Berkshire Community College or prepare them for a pipeline to a good-paying job to take them from lower income to the middle class. It is the best pathway to the middle class.
2 minutes, Ms. Tyer.
Thank you, Jim. There are a couple of strategies for how we can begin to address poverty in our city. One of the first things that I want to explore as soon as I take office is creating additional public-private opportunities to expand access to early education and care for 3- and 4-year-olds. This is important because when a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old has an opportunity to get ready for kindergarten, they will have better success in school. 3- and 4-year-olds who when they arrive in kindergarten, many of them have diverse learning abilities. Many of them have a diverse readiness skill. We have some 5-year-olds who come who have never been in a structured program, who don't know the difference between the letter A and a circle. So by providing them with greater access to early education, all kids in kindergarten can come to school ready to learn at the same level. This is important for their academic success in everything that they do. The added benefit of having a program for 3- and 4-year-olds is that it allows parents to seek employment or to expand their work hours so that they can improve their own family's prosperity. Now, the other opportunity that I would like to explore is how do we provide exposure to job opportunities for those men and women who are currently living in poverty. We have in Berkshire County right now 1,700 or so job vacancies, everything from entry-level positions up to highly educated positions. We need to do a better job of exposing those job opportunities to the men and women who are seeking employment. And finally, this is a complex issue. It cannot be solved by us alone. We will need the help of our state and federal government.
Time, Ms. Tyer.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have...
You have 1 minute either for a rebuttal or you...
Okay. Now we're hitting on early childhood education, and I think that is certainly where you start to address poverty. 44% of the children in the city of Pittsfield, and the children between the ages of 3 and 5, we have 1,554 children. 44% of them are already in very successful programs, licensed pre-K programs. We have 22 here in the city. The children that aren't in programs, there's 870 of them. And we have to encourage them to become involved. And some of those kids, by the way, come from families where they have college-educated parents and they're keeping them home and they're preparing them at home. But there's a number of them who aren't. So if you take the percentage of kids and you take the number of kids who are not in a seed program, who are not in child care providing settings, it would cost the city of Pittsfield to put them into a city-run program, $2.9 million at the minimum. So those are very expensive programs. We have to work with volunteer programs, with other programs that are already up and running.
Time, Mr. Mayor.
To help those children.
I'd like to tell you about a young mother that I've met recently at Dower Square. She and her husband have 4 children. She stays home and cares for the children while he works. He wants to work additional hours to provide more prosperity for their family, but they're in a catch-22. These are the families that are struggling. And where they get caught is that if he works additional hours and makes additional income, that family loses their access to food programs. So the choice is to continue to have access to our food programs or work additional hours and maybe improve the prosperity of my family. It's that gap that we need to begin addressing, and it has to be done together as a state and a community that cares about the people that are struggling in this city. Thank you, Jim.
The next question, given the recent incidents of violence in both the West Side and the Morningside neighborhoods, Other than beefing up police patrols, what other remedies will you as mayor put in place? For example, can these neighborhoods be assigned a designated community police officer to interact with our children by going into our schools, parks, senior housing, to become a familiar face in the neighborhoods? Ms. Tyer, it starts with you.
There's no question about this. Crime is weighing heavily on the hearts and minds of everyone in our city. You know, the tragic events of this past summer have devastated families. We have lost the potential of our young men and women. It's time to be serious about this issue. And I appreciate the point about beefing up police. That is an important aspect of addressing this issue comprehensively. We must have more police officers. We must create new strategies for law enforcement, including community policing, which you've described, Jim. One of the things that I would like to encourage our young police officers to become engaged in is the Police Athletic Association, where the young men and women of our police department become engaged with the youth in this neighborhood and in the neighborhood in the Morningside, so that when these high-risk youths are interacting with police officers in a way that is positive and friendly and engaging before a police officer has to intervene in some sort of crime or violence. There are certainly aspects of violence which becomes now a public health issue. This is a public safety issue and a public health issue. So there needs to be an opportunity within our programming for our neighborhoods where we set up mentors, as we may call them, or people in leadership positions who can intervene in conflict before violence erupts. And that's an important component to addressing this public health issue of violence that we're facing in our city.
How much time?
2 minutes, Mr. Mayor? 2 minutes.
Sorry about that, folks. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned mentoring programs, because we have a community connection program. You had talked about a cure violence program that you were going to institute, which would cost the city $1,050,000. 3 years ago, I applied for a Shannon grant because I knew the approach we had to take. We received $60,000. We are doing the mentoring program that you're suggesting somebody else, we have to pay $1 million for somebody else to do, while we have the state paying us to do just that. We developed a mentoring program through the Community Connection program. We had a meeting here last year after those shootings. 300 people were in this room. 300 people were over at the Morningside School, and we talked about what do we do? And we said, we can do it ourselves. We can do it with that community mentoring program. We now have 40 people who are engaged with youngsters. We have paid mentors, paid counselors who do just that. They intervene when there's a situation arising. And we get information from our teachers, we get information from our school resource officers, and it has been incredibly effective. And I've seen these mentors. I've seen an African-American manager from Berkshire Medical Center working with a youngster, taking him under his wing. It is working, and we're not paying $1 million to do it. We have a tremendous program, and through our community centers, which I established in Dower Square, here on the west side, and in Wilson Project, we are reaching out to those people who have felt disenfranchised for years, and we are making an incredible difference in their lives. So we are doing everything we can that's smart, that's affordable, and that is affecting the lives of so many young men that need that mentor.
Time, Mr. Mayor. 1 minute.
I would suggest that at this point in Pittsfield's history, there shouldn't be a cost-benefit analysis done on protecting our community and on saving lives. It is a priority. It is immediate, and it is urgent. Now, Mayor Bianchi has established community centers in some of our housing facilities. It's my understanding from the people who are engaged in those neighborhoods that they're disappointed that they were not included in how those community centers would meet their needs. They were not asked, what do you need? How can we help? They were opened, and they are not necessarily being well received by the people who are living in those neighborhoods. In fact, one of the community centers is occupying an apartment that could actually be made available to a family in need. In this particular facility, there's an existing community center, a community space where people could gather rather than using an apartment that could be made available for a family.
1 minute, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All those families are in need, and those community centers are incredibly effective. We have had thousands of kids come through that community center at Dower Square, for example. We have had dozens and dozens of programs, health screening. We've had educational programs. We have tutors working with reading at those schools. As a matter of fact, I also hired a crime analyst. She ran some numbers. Our calls from the police department to Dower Square are down by 15%. Arrests are down by 40%. Vandalism and misuse of the property is down. Socialization is down. I've gone out to Dower Square, and I hear people say, hey, Mr. Mayor. Now, I'm sure my predecessor was never there. I'm sure they would not know who he was, but they know this mayor, and they know this mayor cares.
Question number 6. Given recent news of lawsuits regarding the promotional and managerial practices in the police department, do you think there is a relationship or oversight problem between City Hall and the department, or is there a morale issue within the department? If so, what would you do to remedy these issues? Mr. Mayor, it's your answer first.
Thank you. Yeah, there are a couple of lawsuits, and we have one officer who's suing the city, and I guarantee, this is my pledge to the taxpayers, don't worry about a payment there. That's going to be taken care of. You had one officer who is suing the city because he didn't get a promotion. Now, this is an officer who is not involved over the years in any special training. He's not been assigned to hardly any special duties. He has really only one function, and that was as a patrol officer. But he didn't prepare himself for promotion, and he doesn't deserve any sort of consideration in a lawsuit, and he won't get it. He appeared in my office for an interview after the two other candidates appeared in gray suits, a tie, and a white shirt. He appeared in a T-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. He screamed, I don't want this job, as far as I was concerned. We have to hire the most effective people, and if that means being engaged in frivolous lawsuits, so be it. We're going to put the best people on the job, the best people on the streets, and the best people in command positions. We can't afford any less. And so if that means taking somebody like that to court, bring it on. Because the taxpayer shouldn't be paying for substandard, slack service, especially when it comes to public safety positions.
2 minutes, Ms. Tyer.
Well, I would certainly not, either as your mayor or as a challenger, disparage in public the qualifications of an applicant for any position.
Please continue, Ms. Tyer. Please continue. No.
I yield the floor.
1 minute, Mr. Mayor.
An applicant who would play politics on the front page of the local newspaper, I don't think he is concerned about being publicly disparaged.
Ms. Tyer, would you like a response? Okay. Moving on to the next question. Abandoned and unsafe buildings as well as vacant lots are of concern to the West Side Initiative and others. Of greater concern are dwellings used to sell drugs. While the police may be aware of these, what can be done with such agencies as the Health Department in conjunction with police to enforce some type of code restrictions to stem these activities? How would you as mayor coordinate this effort? Ms. Tyer, it starts with you.
Thank you for the question, Jim. And I think this is a critical and important priority for the neighborhoods of the West Side. When I was a member of the Pittsfield City Council, we were given new regulations and stricter requirements for how properties must be maintained. And I voted in favor of those regulations because I believed in the importance of implementing those kinds of standards in our neighborhoods. When we have abandoned properties, vacant properties, landlords who are disrespecting their neighbors by not caring about their properties, a couple of things happen. We lose property value, we lose community pride, it's an opportunity for unwanted behavior to hide. I think that this is a critical issue if we want to improve the quality of life for the people who are living here in the West Side right now. So there are a number of agencies inside of city government that we can deploy to begin addressing these issues immediately. Building codes, public health, fire, police. It needs to be a comprehensive approach, a committed priority, where we set a goal, we measure the goal, and we deliver the progress for the people of the West Side.
2 minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you very much. I put together a vacant building committee 2.5 years ago. Fire department, health department, building inspectors, solicitor's office, community development office. And I told them, start addressing the issues. Of course, foolish regulations and incentives caused the problem. And we can talk about that later. But they have analyzed, and there's 90, almost 100 properties that they analyze on an ongoing basis. And our health department sends nuisance officers out there. Unfortunately, foolish tax regulations a few years earlier precipitated the numbers growing of vacant buildings. It was foolish regulations by the last administration that I tried to stop that has created so many vacant buildings in the West Side. But that doesn't mean we're going to forget about them. Unfortunately, the taxpayer is going to have to pick up the tab for the last administration's mistakes. And we have these people analyzing these properties on an ongoing basis. But we can only afford to do so much. Currently, we will be addressing 481 West Street, 244 Bradford, 88 Robbins, 173 Robbins, 266 Anoda, 1418 South Church, 10 Circular, 5658 John Street, and 211 Linden Street. We work this every day.
You have 1 minute, Ms. Tyer.
Well, I think, unfortunately, the work hasn't produced any results. And I think it's time to make this a top priority and a comprehensive program. And I think that with a led by the mayor of this city, we can bring together the city agencies and address this urgent problem. This is urgent for this neighborhood. And it's simple. If you haven't mowed your lawn, you have to mow your lawn. If you have trash on your porch, you have to remove it. If the windows and doors are broken, you need to secure them, not with plywood. I would require that the windows and doors be secured with windows and doors. This is really important for restoring community pride and for inspiring any kind of new investment that we hope to see here in the city, especially here on the West Side and the Morningside.
1 minute, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Taxpayers shouldn't be expected to invest in windows and doors in vacant buildings. And we have a number of vacant buildings that have become the victim of previous foolish tax incentives. So unfortunately, we have an awful lot of them. But every time we board up a building, we're taking a highway worker who's been working on roads, which, quite frankly, I think are probably better than they have been in years. We're taking them and we're weeding. and we're boarding up buildings. Taxpayers shouldn't have to bear that burden. We're going to have to tackle it because we've had a creation of too many vacant buildings because of foolish regulation that was put in place by the previous administration. And now the taxpayers are paying the burden. But we're going to do it, but we can't do it all at once. If we were to take care of every single vacant building that's on this list, it would cost us at least, cost you at least $2.5 million.
Well,
Tyer, to the next question.
may I make
You can use it in your closing statements.
Thank you.
Now on to the next question. Can you describe your governing style and distinguish it from that of your opponent? How would your style translate into tangible positive changes in our community? Ms. Tyer starts with, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor starts with you.
Thank you. When I first took office as mayor, I identified certain areas that needed to be addressed. Public safety was one of them. And I know I'm not a public safety expert. No mayor is an expert on absolutely everything. So I call in other people. I meet monthly with what I call the Public Safety Task Force. It includes Sheriff Bowler. It includes Chief Wynn. It includes somebody from the District Attorney's Office. It includes somebody from the Pittsfield Housing Authority. But it also includes now somebody from the Probation Department. We talk about best practices. And that's where we came up with specialized zero-tolerance patrols. That's where we came up with the idea for community centers, which make tremendous impacts on the lives of people. That's where we've come up with so many of the ideas that affect public safety. I realized that we needed to address vacant buildings. That's why I put together a collaborative effort and brought together those departments that could address those issues. And they reach out to property owners. They've reached out to the folks that own St. John's Hall. And they've come up with a collaborative approach to effect change. I meet regularly with educators to determine what is the absolute best approach. Where are we falling short? How can we help those children who are having trouble reading to get to that reading level that is going to guarantee success for them? I get out into the schools. I get out into the neighborhoods. I identified a transformative development initiative for the Morningside area because of the mixed use of that neighborhood and the possibilities. But I realized that I can transfer that model to the west side once we've addressed the issues over there. And the issues are great all across the city.
Thank you, Jim. I believe the question was about management style. Thank you.
Governing style, yes.
So I want to make a commitment that implementing better management practices will be a daily commitment when I become your next mayor. You know, I've been working side by side with city employees, and what I know for sure is that everyone wants to excel at their work. And their success begins by establishing a shared vision for our city, by setting priorities and then providing support and the right equipment and then demanding accountability. So what you'll see from me is a mayor who is walking about engaging with employees as they tackle their work. I won't be sitting behind the desk. I will be in the departments. I will be in the trucks. I will be conversing with the employees. Now, I want to also offer employees professional development opportunities so that they can build upon their strengths. All of us know that when you invest in employees, they invest in themselves and they invest in the work that they're doing. I'm also committed to collaborating and partnering with the City Council and the school committee. These are the elected officials of our city. And when we do not engage in collaboration and partnership, it is to the detriment of the people who we are elected to represent. I was a member of the City Council, and I know how important communication is in order for all of us to make good decisions. So I will engage in regular, proactive communication with my colleagues. And I would say that together that we can build a modern government for our modern city, but we have to do it together in partnership. Now, that doesn't mean that tough questions won't be asked and that I won't be challenged, But the secret to this is that I will tackle the question and I will not sideline someone who challenges me. In fact, I welcome it because it sharpens my thinking. Thank you.
We have 1 minute, Mr. Mayor.
1 minute. Okay, thank you very much. I think my management style probably is most demonstrated by the things that we have been able to take care of that weren't addressed previously. We conducted the first ever tax title auction. I inherited $9 million in unpaid taxes. When I came to City Hall, I realized we had to take the for sale sign off City Hall because for too long, people with connections didn't pay their taxes. That's not acceptable. My management style got that done. We reduced the city's health insurance. We're probably going to be paying less than $2 million less than we did before, giving the same amount of benefits. My management style addressed it there. And we have a comprehensive pavement management system that takes politics out of paving. And we got that done because of my management style.
One minute, Ms. Tyer.
I would like to take just one moment to address this health insurance switch that occurred. There may be some merit in this decision, but what happened in the process of making this decision was created a sense of distrust among everyone that was affected by this decision. You know, it was not communicated effectively to the other elected officials who had to begin to answer questions from employees and constituents. There was not an engagement and a partnership in making a decision that had a significant impact on the lives of people and on the budget of our city. If I had been faced with that decision, it would have been handled collaboratively with a fully engaging every stakeholder that this decision would affect.
Next question. As mayor, what would you focus on regarding the young adults of the West Side neighborhood and other neighborhoods like it in Pittsfield? Ms. Tyer, it starts with you.
I think that we need to take the lead from the people who are here in the West Side, raising those young adults. It is clear to me that every day there are people and leaders and activists here in the West Side who understand the importance of mentoring the young men and women who live here in this neighborhood. There are many examples of community engagement. Shirley Edgerton runs wonderful programs for the young women here in the West Side. We now have the Man Up organization, and their goal is to become more engaged in their community in leading from the front rather than reacting to issues as they arise. I think one of the most important things that we can do for young adults is to give them a feeling that they matter. And when we invest in this community, and by the way, the people of the West Side pay taxes too, and it's time for them to get their fair share of city services. So when we make sure that the West Side is receiving our attention and the young people see that their government cares about their neighborhood, then they begin to believe that they have the right to advocate for themselves and to expect a better life.
2 minutes, Mr. Mayor.
2 minutes, thank you. I love visiting the schools. I love sitting down. I read with kids. It's really enriching. That is actually the best part of being mayor, is engaging with the youngsters here at Morningside, or excuse me, at the Conte School, but also at Morningside, and I spend an awful lot of time up at Crosby. Kids have to feel as though they're a part of something. And we do a tremendous job here in the city of Pittsfield. I'm very supportive and voted in favor of making sure that kids have a good breakfast, that they have a good lunch, creating a educational system that is meaningful for them, but letting them know that we care. That's why in the community centers, now Dower Square has 46 of the 50 units are headed by single moms. We created a moms group to talk about the issues they're having with their children. But we also reach out to the children. And I've spent time out there. We've carved pumpkins together. And we've had a great time. And we've let them know that there's somebody in City Hall that really cares about them. But we also always emphasize the need for a good education, the need for them to be able to read, to love books, to love to learn. And that's what I have enjoyed doing. And I've also enjoyed those other youngsters, 14, 15-year-olds. I've loved putting them together with some of the spectacular people, men and women, who've been engaged in the mentoring program. And you see a difference in their lives. And it's a nationally recognized program to help those youngsters lead a successful life, to avoid those bad decisions. That's what I'm most encouraged about, to see the people of the West Side, the people of the East Side, North Side, South Side, engaged with our youngsters, caring about those kiddos.
You have 1 minute, or you may ask a question.
I yield the floor.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, would you like an additional minute?
Additional minute? I would love an additional minute. Don't ask a politician if he wants another minute. But the fact of the matter is, we do have to help families. We do have to let those people who typically feel disengaged, engaged, that they are part of our community. And we do that. We do that in so many ways. I got a call today, and I was asked to be at the Baptist Church again this year to hand out turkeys. We meet the poorest people at that program, and I talk to them, and I ask them about the children and their family. It is really important that we let people know that we care, that we're genuine with people, that we are creating programs, that we're being responsible stewards for them, because they are going to take over this city someday. And I hope that some of the little kiddos that come into my office to read will someday be sitting in that office.
I think, Jim, the way that you show that you care is by putting your investment in the neighborhood. The young adults of the West Side spend a lot of time in their parks, and the parks have become their community. We know that the spirit of Reverend Durant and Mrs. Durant exist in those parks today, and we haven't invested enough money in the parks to give the young adults who live here in the West Side the belief that they matter and the things that they care about are heard and delivered.
Next question. What current initiatives or organizations do you see as key to the success of the West Side, or do you see success being driven by something not yet in place? Mr. Mayor, it starts with you.
Thank you. I think we have it all in place. I've said it I don't know how many times already, and there are people from the West Side Initiative who have been laboring for years and are making improvements and communicate with their elected officials. When I was a ward counselor, I spent an inordinate amount of time in the schools, but with the West Side Initiative. And I think what we have to do is we have to bring people together to work on organizations such as the West Side. We have so many people doing great things. We have to make sure that we coordinate those efforts. And that's something that is a little bit of a trick. But with the schools as a catalyst, as an opportunity for these youngsters. The schools are so important. Here at the West Side, the Conte School, it's a community school. The community should come together around this school and the people of the West Side Initiative, the Man Up program, all of the programs. The Christian Center, we haven't mentioned too much of that, is a tremendous community organization. We should all coalesce together around our schools and around the West Side Initiative. But the community schools were built by very wise people to serve a community operation. They are open very early in the morning to feed children, very late at night to take care of community organizations that want to improve their community. I would urge the Man Up organization, I would urge the Christian Center, I would urge the churches to reach out again. And I know we've done it in the past, and I know people have been frustrated because they can't get people engaged. But I've seen an engagement this year that is just so compelling and so heartwarming, and I think we are there. And it doesn't take millions of dollars in taxes to do it.
2 minutes, Ms. Tyer.
Laboring for years, there has been a significant commitment by many volunteers laboring for years, yet their struggle continues. Why is it that we have not been able to respond to the hopes and dreams of the people of the West Side? What I know for sure is that the people of the West Side have been asking for years for a dedicated community center that they can use to engage their community for whatever purpose they see fits, for their opportunities to socialize together, to provide programming for the for children and young men and women. Now, before Mayor Bianchi suggests that the taxpayers of Pittsfield will have to pay for this community center, I would say this, maybe a little bit, but what I will do immediately is begin engaging with organizations throughout the city who can provide us with a financial resource to make this dream a reality. It does not have to all be funded by taxpayer dollars. There are financial institutions, there are organizations, there are grants. We need to get busy making this a reality for the people of the West Side.
A minute response, thank you. And I met with people who came in and talked about the community center very early on. And there was no business plan. There was no understanding of how to pay for it. Those same people that do wonderful things, those bank foundations, those charitable organizations, they are asked to do everything. There is a limit to what we can do. I will support any project that makes sense. But when you talk about a community center, and I talked to the executive director of the Christian Center, and she said, a community center, what are we? We have two tremendous churches here on the West Side. They are community centers, and I've had meetings there, and there have been social organizations there. There is no more of a community center than a community school. And while I applaud the dreams, I will be happy to make a dream a reality if it makes sense and it's sustainable.
1 minute, Ms. Tyer.
There was a plan. There was the beginnings of a plan, and there was the beginnings of some funding. But again, it languished under the current administration. Now, if I were the mayor and I were presented with an idea that wasn't fully vetted, and I was engaged with this community, and there was no business plan, I would say, okay, let's work together to create the business plan that you need to sell your idea to the financial institutions. Let's do it together. I wouldn't just walk away and say, unfortunately, you don't have the right business plan and I can't help you. I would roll up my sleeves, sit down at the table, and figure out a way to develop a business plan that would work to make this a reality.
Before we get to the closing statements, I'm going to allow the candidates one question to ask the other candidate any question you would like. There will be 2 minutes for a response, no rebuttal. Mr. Mayor, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I ask a question. Why is this microphone buzzing? Is that my question? No. My question is this. You've talked about a number of initiatives. I've just done sort of a back-of-the-envelope jotting of numbers. We're talking about millions of dollars. When you are the mayor, you are going to have dozens of priorities. Not you, Linda, but anybody who is a mayor has the responsibility to the entire city, to all the taxpayers. And you can't just talk, about great projects without having some concept of how you pay for it. And it is great to talk about things and to suggest this is what you do, but believe me, the mayor has to have a dose of reality and has to serve many servants and has 45,000 people to address. I guess I would ask you is, how do you go about paying for everything you've suggested just this evening?
2 minutes, Mr.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I know that what you want people to think about my plan is that I intend to pay for it all with taxpayer dollars. Certainly, there will need to be a reallocation of priorities, an assessment of what's most important for our future and for our great potential. Certainly, there will have to be sacrifices made on some other side of the balance sheet. But what my commitment to the people of the West Side is that I will look at the other side of the balance sheet and find out what sacrifices we have to make so that you get your fair share. I understand that there are 40,000 people in the city of Pittsfield who expect quality services. And as the manager of the city and the manager of these departments, of course, setting priorities, establishing accountability will be a part of the daily operations of an administration led by me. So before we say that everything has to be paid for with tax dollars, I suggest that there are many resources available to us. There are grants available through gateway cities that we have not applied for. There are resources within state agencies that we have not tapped into. It's time now to get an energized commitment around these resources. You're right. We can't expect taxpayers to pay for everything, but there are other resources available to us. We need to chase them down and make them happen.
Ms. Tyer, you now are able to ask the mayor a question.
Thank you. I think one of the important aspects of the West Side is the level of volunteerism that exists here and how important it is when the people of the West Side ask for or seek help in their government, that they're heard and responded to. And an example that I would like to point out is the historic preservation of the Springside House and how that effort was led by hundreds of hours of volunteers to create a master plan for the Springside House. And I think that that particular plan has not been met with the greatest sense of energy and urgency for how to preserve that important gem of our city. So I would ask, what kind of message does it send to those who volunteer in our community when they spend time on these committees and develop plans and then they're not responded to? How do we continue to encourage volunteerism when government doesn't step up, when the volunteers submit their ideas and their master plans and their proposals? So I would ask, how does that message, what message does that send to our volunteers when they're not heard and responded to?
2 minutes, Mr. Mayor.
I guess we're moving away from the West Side and now talking about Springside Park. That's fine. And I'm happy to do so. We have worked diligently with the Springside Park. I've met with the sheriff. I've talked about how we might be able to utilize some of his volunteer effort to at least get the Springside House painted. Interestingly enough, I suggested, why don't we take some of the young men who are sitting in the jail, let's get them certified to remove lead paint. This way here, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to take fellas who have been who have been visiting that jail more than once. We're training them in a trade that they can use when they get out, and we're utilizing them. We did that. We spent 6 weeks. We trained them. They became de-lead certified, and then they worked on Springside House. We have $500,000 that was approved in the capital plan to continue to work on the Springside House. We have $500,000 to leverage other dollars. We can't do it alone, but we have a track record. I have a track record of taking seed money, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, and creating a plan. But there are funding cycles, and we are preparing for that next funding cycle, which is going to allow us to stabilize the house, to get it painted, and then to have a comprehensive plan for Springside Park. So I would just suggest to people, be patient, be involved, be confident. You have professionals working on it.
Now head into the closing statements. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes, no rebuttals. Ms. Tyer, it starts with you.
Thank you. It has been a real privilege to be here this evening to engage with the community here on the West Side. It's so important to me that you know that you have my commitment to hearing and understanding and working with you to help you achieve the things that you hope for yourselves. There is throughout our city such great potential. There's a lot of obstacles, a lot of challenges, but there is also great potential for our future. So it's time to get moving. For the next 4 years, I will lead our city in a professional, collaborative way with a shared vision that speaks to the hearts and souls and dreams of the people of our city. Our future depends on it. Now, all across our city, we've acknowledged here tonight that people are doing great things, and every day, government needs to partner with those organizations, not be an obstacle to their success. So my promise is simple, that I will restore your confidence in government. I will approach every challenge, every initiative, every problem with an attitude of how can we, not with the attitude of no. You know, holding, as I said earlier in my opening comments, holding the office of mayor provides a platform for being an activist in your community. So I say, together, let's make our city ready for good things to happen. Please vote for me on November 3rd to be your next mayor. Thank you.
I have been a hardworking, honest mayor, and I appreciate the support, and I appreciate all the wonderful people who've been involved in government and who I've invited to be involved in government. But one thing a mayor shouldn't do, a mayor shouldn't offer hollow promises just to pander for votes. Absolutely unacceptable. I know sometimes the things I say don't sound like a politician, and that's because I'm not really a politician. I spent 35 years in business, and I've made decisions that make sense. And I'm not going to prey on the hopes and dreams. I'm going to make sure that the hopes and dreams are attainable and realistic. And then I will work as hard as I possibly can to make them happen. But I've worked very hard, and I have a record. And it's important that you ask, what have you done? We're going to be breaking ground on the new Taconic High School, which languished for years. We're going to have a strong financial commitment to the city. We worked very hard to have 3-year contracts for teachers, which didn't happen before, and which was a travesty and only affected our children. We've reestablished a vocational program that makes sense. And we've done things in public safety that didn't break the back of the taxpayer, but is having an effect. And as far as economic development is concerned, we're going to continue with the Innovation Center that's going to create jobs and opportunity for some of the youngsters that are going to be coming through that door tomorrow morning. And I pledge to you that I'm going to operate this city in a reasonable manner, smart manner, and I'm always going to be honest to you.
I'm going to ask both candidates to stand. Let's have a hand for both candidates. This concludes tonight's mayoral debate. Thank you to the candidates for participating, the West Side Neighborhood Initiative for hosting, and for those in attendance. Remember, Election Day is November 3rd. Have a good night.